All right, so what's the difference between spring tide and neap tide? Well, spring tide and neap tide basically describes how the sun and the moon pull on the earth due to gravity. During spring tide, the moon, sun, and earth make a straight line, and that's what you guys need to focus on. Spring tide equals straight. It makes a nice straight line. So when the sun, earth, and moon all line up, that's spring tide. Now it does that during two moon phases. It does that during a new moon when the moon is in between the sun and the earth, and we see only the dark side, and it's again a nice straight line. It also makes a nice straight line when it's on a full moon, when the moon is on the other side of the planet Earth, but still being lit up by the sun. Remember, the sun is bigger than the Earth, so the Earth is not going to block the light from the sun. But again, it makes a nice straight line. Here is the sun, here's the Earth, and here's the moon right there. So it's making a nice straight line, and that's called spring tide. That's when the tides are going to be the strongest. You always have high and low tide, but right here and right here are these bulges. That is going to be the high tide region. This is going to be the low tide region. And since the Earth is spinning, the high and lows constantly change throughout the day. But during spring tide, the highs are going to be especially high, which means when the water comes in, it's going to come in a whole lot closer to the shoreline. And when the water goes out during low tide, it's going to go out a whole lot farther. But neap tide is different. Now, neap tide is when the Earth, Sun, and Moon make a 90-degree angle. This is a 90-degree angle. It's like a corner. So neap tide is not straight. It is a 90-degree angle. It makes more where moon is pulling in one direction and the sun is pulling in the other direction. Now, during these two moon phases, you're going to have a third quarter moon or a first quarter moon. And that's when the moon is not in between the earth and it's not on the other side. They do not make a straight line. So the moon is pulling in this direction, but the sun is pulling in this direction, and they kind of offset each other. The moon still, because it's closer, is going to pull a little bit more. That's why there's a little bulge. But in addition to the earth is still spinning, the tides are still going to happen. However, the high and low tides are going to be really weak. Here's where you're going to have the high tides, and here's where you're going to have the low tides. And during neap tide, they're not strong. When the tides come in, the water's not going to come in as far during high tide, and the water's not going to go out as far during low tide. But you got to kind of memorize where things are. Just remember, spring is straight. Neap is not straight. It's more of a 90-degree angle. That's one way you can remember that. And then the moon phases. The strongest moon phases that everybody typically remembers for spring tide is the new moon and the full moon. The ones that are next easiest to remember are the quarter moons. So hopefully this has helped you.